Let's talk colonoscopy prep. For those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Stephanie, and welcome to the lovely edition of Let's Talk Colonoscopies. This is the first video of a few that we're going to do on this subject. Yes, it's not the funnest thing to go through. For those of you who've been through a colonoscopy prep before, my hat's off to you. It is not the easiest thing. For those of you who have never done one before, it's not going to be easy. It's going to take a little bit of some mental strength. Preparing is definitely going to make things a little bit easier. So today we're going to talk about a few things that I've learned in the now 6 colonoscopies I've had over the last 5 years. A few things that could be more specific to people with IBD or IBD disorders or IBS. These are some of the tricks that I've found have helped me. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to help you, but I hope that some of these things may help make things just a little bit easier. First things first is your prep itself. The reality is you don't have much control over it. Your doctor, your gastroenterologist, your specialist, whoever's going to do it is going to send you typically a letter with all the wonderful things that they want you to do. Typically you get this big jug. It's a 4-liter jug with powder in it. You'll fill it with water and then follow their instructions as to how they want you to take it. Some gastros don't care which prep you do. There's a few different options. They're all over the counter. I highly recommend if it's your first prep, just follow their instructions. Don't think about it too much. The last colonoscopy I had, about 6 hours in, I had to get hospitalized due to some severe side effects from the prep itself. Now, this is not common. After that scenario, I had a conversation with my gastroenterologist to kind of discuss a few different things and tweaks that we can do to her protocol so that I can do protocol at home, because finishing your prep at a hospital in an emergency room in the midst of a pandemic is highly, highly unrecommended. If it's your first, don't worry too much. It is going to be a little stressful. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. At the end of the day, they need to make sure that your bowels are clean, and this is how it works. I'm going to go through a few things that I've learned over my colonoscopies and a few things that I've done that have helped me over the years get through prep, as well as a few things that I'm going to be trying this time around with my prep to see whether or not they help. We will actually be vlogging my prep next week, and we'll be showing you the wonderful experience that is preparing for a colonoscopy. First things first, this stuff. I'm sure everyone knows what this is. It's toilet paper. You're gonna need a lot of it, and when I mean a lot more than you probably think. The reality is you are literally emptying your entire system for almost 2 days. Yes, your prep is literally 24 hours. We'll get into the post-prep things, but I highly recommend, if you have a little bit more cash, to buy a higher end or higher ply toilet paper without going overboard, but something that's going to be soft because you're going to be using a lot of it. I personally really like the Kirkland stuff. It is not the softest stuff out there, but it's one of my personal favorites. And so I always use the Kirkland stuff and we make sure we have lots of it in the house. But if you have a toilet paper like a Charmin Ultra or something like that, that you really like, that you don't always splurge on, I would recommend that you get it for this prep. It'll make things just a little bit smoother. Let's do these things. So, wet ones. I typically get biodegradable or flushable wipes. You're gonna notice that about halfway through your prep, things are gonna start getting a little fun. For those of you that have IBD or IBS, things are gonna get even more fun as the prep starts filtering through your system. And so if you can get disposable ones and you know that your toilets can handle it, because that's the other thing, just because they're disposable and they're flushable, I would recommend having just like a bag next to the toilet and doing that kind of situation. We bought these guys. I'm still looking for flushable ones. Honestly, we haven't been able to find them. in the last little while, and so I don't know if we're gonna find them in time for my prep. So if I do need some additional softness and or care, then I will use these guys, and we're just gonna, have to deal with it after the fact. I'm not saying this is pretty, because it really isn't, but this is the reality. The prep itself can be quite painful to get down, in the sense of causing a lot of nausea. If you're someone that gets nauseous in general, or has a lot of nausea, I would highly recommend having some gravel. Typically gravel that's not going to make you tired, because you're going to be up a lot. So if you're tired on top of that, that's going to really suck. So I would recommend like anti-fatigue gravel. Take it at least an hour or so before you start your prep, whenever that timing works. It will help. Unfortunately, you may have to take a few different doses of it, so don't max out on the first shot, because you may need more of it. The reality is you need it to go through your system. So if you do end up throwing any of it up, typically what they say is you wait 20 to 30 minutes and then keep going. But if you can't keep it down, you're not going to be able to finish your prep, and you're not going to be able to get your colonoscopy done, and you're going to have to do this all over again. So it is a bit of a process. Gravel is highly recommended if you are a fairly nauseous person or some type of anti-nausea. My favorite anti-nausea, so it's not actually a gravel or a medicated version, but it's actually a ginger anti-nausea. This is called the Life brand. It is my favorite anti-nausea supplement that I use. Nothing beats it. It's the only one that's ever worked for me. And so we keep this in the house in mass, because if I get nauseous, this is the only thing that works for me. So if you have ever had anti-nausea pills or anything like that and they haven't worked, I would recommend this one. Give it a shot. You can get one that has like 10 tablets, and it's like $2 or $3. And so you can give it a try without having to spend too much money on it. With your prep, typically what will happen is your jug or your powder, whichever one you get prescribed, you'll typically get prescribed Dorcolax. Now, this is essentially just another tablet that you prep and start with. Typically you'll have this right before you start your liquid prep. Not everyone reacts the same way with Dorcolax, but for me, within an hour or two of having these, I'm down for the count. I have to be at the house with very easy access to a toilet, because it's over for me. And so that's another thing that you're gonna wanna think about if you're doing a colonoscopy prep and you typically are going to work. I wouldn't recommend working. I would take a sick day, or try at least to make sure that your boss is aware that you're having to get this prep done, and making sure that you're, not stuck in a 5-hour meeting or anything like that, because the reality is if you're not in the bathroom every 10 to 20 minutes while you're doing your prep, chances are you're probably going to, so you're just not going to be able to partake in a typical day at work. And so, you're going to want to take your prep day off. Some people bounce back from their colonoscopy really quickly. Some don't, but the prep itself, it's really hard to be able to work and do your prep at the same time, considering the fact that you also have to take liquids like every hour on top of that. So there's just a lot to keep in mind when you're prepping. And so trying to do that and working at the same time, I just don't recommend it. Now on to the liquids. So like I just said, you're typically having to take about a cup or two of liquid with your prep every hour. So depending on the prep you're doing, you typically have an hour to 2 hours to finish half a jug. And from there, you just have to drink fluids and fluid and fluid and fluid and fluid and fluid. You get really bored with fluids halfway through this process. So here are a few different things that you can think about that are not your standard fluid that may help you through this process. These are some of my favorite drinks that I have on hand when I'm getting through my prep. So, Gatorade. It's one of those things that, yes, it's high in sugar. Yes, it's not the healthiest thing in the world. But the reality is you're not consuming many calories going through this process because you're not going to be eating for the next 2 days. And we'll get to the post-care in a second. But the reality is you're going to need the electrolytes in here to survive this lovely process. It just helps with recovery. You're gonna find that you bounce back a little bit faster and balance your electrolytes while you're through this. It'll just make things a little bit easier. I would highly recommend some type of Gatorade. Color-wise, you cannot drink anything that's blue, purple, red, anything that has any of those dyes in it. And so we typically have orange, or I have some of the clear white Gatorade. And so Gatorade, I drink like many of these while I do my prep. The other thing is you can have tea and coffee. And so problem with that is you can't put anything in it. So if you're the type of coffee drinker that drinks it with, milk and sugar and things like that, it's really hard. You can have some sugar, can't have any milk or cream. It's supposed to stay away from anything that has lactose in it. So the way I do it, I usually get very, very hot going through my prep. I don't know why, but because of my irregular temperature, I typically, while I'm going through my prep, will get very warm. And so all of my drinks are cold. Now, if you're the type of person that gets cold, then honestly, you can just swap all of these for hot drinks, but same concept. Peppermint tea is amazing. I really like this Pure Leaf Peach Tea. It's just one of my favorites. I don't have this very often, but it's kind of my little sugary, safety drink when I'm doing my colonoscopy. So I usually have a few of these. But honestly, most of the way through, you're not going to want to drink a whole lot. So you got to make sure that what you are drinking, you enjoy it, because otherwise you're just not going to do it. And if you don't drink enough fluids, the prep gets stuck in you. And trust me, that's 10,000 times worse. So make sure you drink enough fluids. Ginger tea, if you're someone who highly gets nauseous, I would recommend it. It's fabulous. Honestly, any tea is fine as long as it's herbal. The less caffeine that's in it, the better, just because caffeine has a tendency, well, at least for me anyways, to cause some irregular bowel problems. And so I try and stay away from it as much as I can. If you are a black coffee drinker, by all means, go nuts. It will, however, dehydrate you even more because of what you're going through with your prep. So you are going to have to compensate with a lot more water. Last but not least is something that I haven't done before. I know someone who did this during one of their last colonoscopies, and it seemed to work really well for them. So I'm gonna have it on hand and give it a shot. It's lemons. And so there's a few different things you can do with the lemons. Main thing is doing hot lemon water. Try and calm your system down, especially when your stomach is really not feeling well. If you're doing your second round of liquids, I would recommend this. It'll help kind of alleviate some of the nausea. For some people it works, but the hot liquid will also just try and temper things a little bit. If you're someone who really doesn't like the flavor of the prep is typically orange flavored. Mine has always been anyways. And so trying to have orange Gatorade with orange prep, but really it's not the easiest thing. If you're not someone who likes lemons, but you really like oranges, maybe that would be an option too. But what she did was actually cut these up, and after she had a glass of her prep, would literally chew on a lemon. And it just instantly changes the acidity in your mouth and kind of changes the flavoring really quickly. And so if you're having just more of gag reflexes or having a hard time just drinking the fluid itself, I would highly recommend that. It's, it's kind of like the lime and tequila shot kind of concept. So with lemons, those are all the lovely things that I have ready on hand and prepped and ready to go for my prep. I'm hoping this one won't be as bad as the last one. The reality is we'll keep you posted, and hopefully the lemons work this time. I'm really interested to see how that goes. But if you have a prep coming up, or if any of these tips seem like they may help you, let me know. I'd love to know whether or not you guys have any other tips as well. You know, good luck if you're about to do a prep, and you know, hang in there. A lot of it is mental. You know, keep yourself distracted. You know, get some good movies ready on Netflix for you. And make sure that you've got a large functional bathroom ready to go. After your colonoscopy, one thing that I did learn very quickly is that you can't go straight back to eating whatever you want. I was starving after my first colonoscopy, and all I wanted was food. And so I had Luke stop at an A&W on the way home, and that was probably the worst mistake I've ever made. It went straight through me. It was awful. Couldn't have A&Ws for a while after that, but you really need to keep the food intake post-colonoscopy on the lighter side. You're gonna wanna make sure that a lot of it has fluid. Have a good soup, you know, maybe, you know, a light chili with no beans. I know it sucks because you probably haven't had food in a while at this point, but you really got to reintegrate that food slowly. The reality is you've literally just emptied your entire system, but you just got to take it a little bit easy for a little while longer. Now, don't forget to deep breathe and slow roll till next time. Bye, guys.